I thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I normally don't speak in front of a podium, but today might be an exception. But let me just set up here. I'm a little nervous, so excuse me. A warm welcome to each of you to the very first ever DCOM Summit. You won't believe how thrilled I am to be with you here today in what I hope will be 2 days of the sharing of ideas and experiences in e-commerce, or as some of us would like to call it, digital commerce. It was just over 1 year ago when a small group of us, friends mostly, sat over a couple of cups of coffee and decided it was high time that we pick our brains and try and how we can move this small industry of ours together. So it was really what we had in common was that our respective businesses were in some ways connected to the various pieces of e-commerce. Some of us were in the classifieds, online classified space. Some of us were doing marketplaces. A bunch of us were in deal sites and doing payments and delivery. But really what we shared in common was the feeling that we are on the cusp of something very exciting, something that was going to get really big very soon. Now, we've all been waiting for that tipping point, and I'm not smart enough to tell you when it'll happen, but I can tell you that it's going to happen very soon. And this is precisely why this small band of volunteers decided, over some cups of coffee, to get together and see how we can really push this along and really find a way that we can increase the number of digital entrepreneurs in the country. And this really gave birth to DCOM. So, today, this is why we're all here today, because today is really the culmination of that meeting about a year ago when this small band of volunteers decided to make this event happen. So, at this point, I really would like to take the chance to introduce a bunch of very cool and hardworking people who helped me put this event together. So, just very quickly, please acknowledge yourself. Fred Levy, who is the Vice President of DCOM. Fred is from France, but he's my French bulldog friend. But he's really a Pinoy at heart, and he's never going to leave the Philippines. So thank you very much, Fred. And the indefatigable Norlin Babiera, who is the Secretariat of DCOM, and without this, none of this event will happen. And the very hardworking and youthful Sheila Lina, the CEO of Air21 and Shopinas.com, and our payments master, Mr. DragonPay. Where is Dick Chang? Thank you, Dick, for all the hard work. And another guy who actually hails from Boston, but vows never to leave the Philippines also. The chairman of the DCOM Summit, chairperson, Dave Condon. Dave? So very instrumental in putting this together. And another very youthful person and pioneer of the online classified space, Mayan Bundalian of sulit.com.ph. So thanks, guys. So why are we all here? I just want to walk you through the intent of our small association. And really, our vision is really all about how to make Filipino merchants successful in the world marketplace. And we set ourselves some very ambitious but important objectives in what we want to drive in the years ahead. It's all about establishing the right standards and how to make Filipino merchants leverage the exciting new world of digital commerce. Lastly, we also want to talk about how we can promote e-commerce as a viable reason for investors to come to our country and invest. And last, but even more importantly, is really partnering with our partners in government in establishing sound policies and standards for digital commerce. And at this point, I want to acknowledge the presence of our partner from the DTI, Undersecretary Zenny Maglaya. So thank you very much for gracing us. She'll be one of the panelists this morning. But our keynote speaker for the morning is no other than one of the early pioneers and principal sponsors of the E-Commerce Act of the Philippines way back in 2002. I'd like to acknowledge Senator Ramon Magsaysay. who will be delivering the keynote address after my short talk. So thank you very much for your presence, Senator. How big is e-commerce exactly? Well, I did a little bit of research, and it's the best number I got was 963 billion, and this is an awfully big number. And to put things in perspective, what percentage of that out of total retail are we really talking about? Well, to give you a benchmark, in the US, the total e-commerce size is about $200 billion, which represents about 10% of total US retail. That's a pretty big number, driven by the likes of Amazon and eBay. In the UK, it's even bigger at 11% share of UK retail. Across the rest of Asia Pacific, it's about 3%. And in Latin America, which is, you could say comparable to Southeast Asia, it's 2%. Now, what about here in our own country? Anyone venture a guess as to how big the e-commerce market is? And maybe to make things a little bit easier, what would non-travel e-commerce size be? Non-travel, because in the early days, it was really the travel and hotel industries that drove this, which is why the number is probably bigger. But what we're really talking about here is, in terms of this summit, is really non-travel e-commerce. Well, there's no hard data, which is one of the challenges of being in this industry. That's why we are here, to try and put our minds together and come up with some harder figures. But my own estimate is that it would be 4.8 billion pesos. Again, this is non-travel. Now, what percentage of retail would this be? Appallingly, it's only less than 1% versus the rest of Asia, which is at 3%. Now, the question is, why is it this small? There are several reasons for this, which are the challenges that we face, and we are going to be dealing with some of these challenges in the next couple of days. No one has the answers, but I think through this gathering of experts and entrepreneurs and practitioners in this room, maybe we can arrive at better answers on how we can drive this thing further. The first thing that we thought of is really the traditional trade legacy of a Filipino shopper. We are still used to this trading culture where we need certain guarantees from whom we are buying from. So this lack of accreditation and absence of guarantees makes it a little bit hard for a first-time online shopper to transact over the internet. The second reason that I see is this concern over purchasing something that might not be fully authentic, something that might be considered counterfeit or knockoff. These are legitimate concerns, and these are some of the issues when we have the panel discussion about fraud that we will be discussing. The third issue I see is this whole idea that we want to know who we are buying from. I mean, this is a normal phenomenon, not just in the Philippines, but in the rest of Southeast Asia. So I call it the suki mentality. And lastly, and again, there's a panel discussion on payments. There's this whole evolution. We have some ways to go in terms of how we can make the Filipino buyer and seller arrive at a mutually acceptable platform for payments. So that infrastructure is still evolving. So these are the issues that we will be dealing with over the next 2 days. I recently came from a trip to India, and it's a fascinating market with many similarities to the Philippines. Although it's much bigger. It's a population of 1.2 billion, 700 million mobile phone users. Internet penetration is about 12%, so lower than the Philippines, where we have actually crossed the 30% penetration rate. So that's about maybe 150 million people on the internet, 240 million bank accounts, but only 4 million active online buyers. So why is this? Well, there's several reasons, and a survey when I met with my sister, the sister companies of Multiply in India, they cited 2 reasons. One was Indian buyers are still scared to buy over the internet, and there is still a lack of trust in the shopping experience, and this is why online shopping, just like here in the Philippines, is relatively inactive. So it was good to see some parallels, and I learned quite a bit from my 3 days in India. And I guess one of our sister companies is a marketplace also like Multiply, employing a slightly different model. It's a marketplace, not with storefronts, but with product listings. I also met with a company that was a payments aggregator, a very ambitious and emerging player in that space. And over in Bangalore, we have a sister company called Flipkart that has a very different model. They are more of an Indian version of Amazon, wherein they own all the different pieces of their value chain. So I guess my own takeaway from my 3 days in India 2 weeks ago was that there is really no one proven model in e-commerce. The second thing I took away was that each market is really very unique and different. So we in the e-commerce industry need to be flexible. We need to be willing to experiment and constantly tweak our business models for us to arrive at the one successful formula, if ever there is one. So it's really that. And I guess lastly, I really want to talk about people and talent. The ones who I feel will succeed are those who are, who combine, both local market knowledge, knowledge of buyer behaviors, and really an interest in knowing what people are buying, and obviously some awareness of the tools of technology that are available to make e-commerce work. So that was my 3 days in India. Now let's talk about the local e-commerce or digital commerce scene. These are a sampling of some of the members of DCOM. If I excluded any one of your logos, my apologies. It was late night last night when I was putting this together. But it just gives you an example of the different kinds of players that are present. Now, how did this evolve? Well, several years ago, Cebu Pacific kind of was the first wave of e-commerce in the Philippines, along with the individual merchants who were beginning to trade over a social network called Multiply before we transformed. And then, of course, there was the emergence of what today is the giant of online classifieds, sulit.com, .ph. So that was sometime in 2009, 2010. And then in late 2000 or mid 2010 came the emergence of the deal sites. So obviously, Ensogo and Cash Pinoy, who are members of DCOM, were the dominant players who came to the Philippines. And then, actually, it was only in 2011 that we at Multiply announced our formal transformation to an online marketplace. So in 2012, when our association was born, I made a statement that we were still in day one of e-commerce. And in 2012, we actually made some progress, and the industry, in our estimation, grew between 20 to 30% in 2012. So in the next couple of days, we're going to get this group of experts together and share with you ideas on how we can push this industry along in line more with the share of e-commerce, more in tandem with the rest of the Asia Pacific. So I want to talk about now for a few minutes, what I think are the building blocks for building a solid foundation for e-commerce in the country. The first that I can think of is really the partnership with government. And really, this is all about flexible regulation that is aligned with the digital environment. Next, we need the telcos to give us affordable broadband. Thirdly, we want the delivery services companies to get aligned with the digital world. There are not too many delivery companies that are fully built for e-commerce, just a few. So we want the traditional carriers to understand the needs of online merchants. And obviously, we need money. So we need investors who are willing to invest in the Philippines, in the entrepreneurs who are trying to build the e-commerce environment. And last but not least, we need the flexibility of consumers who are willing to trust and be confident to shop in the new emerging digital world. So what are the opportunities? The opportunities facing us are, we look at what's happening in the rest of the world, and there are quite a number of things that I want to briefly discuss, because this will be discussed in more detail at the various panel discussions in the next 48 hours. The first one that comes to mind is T-commerce and M-commerce. You guys know what M-commerce is. is, that's mobile. Some of you may not know what I mean by T. T refers to tablet. And really the availability of the new graphics and video of the tablets that are becoming more affordable to everyone are going to give merchants an even greater advantage in being able to reach potential online shoppers. As more and more people spend their time online, then it is only logical that they will begin to shop and transact online once the payments and logistics infrastructures are more secure. So again, a very interesting slide to back this up is that according to Morgan Stanley, by the year 2014, there will be more smartphones in the world for the first time, more than desktop users. So this is really a very big convergence and something that is actually going to be very good news to everyone who has already a step up on building their mobile shopping application. Just in 2012 alone here in the Philippines, the share of smartphones grew out of the total handset market from 9% to 24%, so which makes the Philippines the fastest growing smartphone market in Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia was the fastest growing smartphone market in the world. So it makes us the fastest growing smartphone market in the world. So it's good news for everyone as the price points of these handsets and smartphones becomes more affordable to the ordinary Pinoy. The second opportunity I'd like to talk about is really the need for more flexible shopping models. When I went to India, when I visit Indonesia, where our head office is, I see different shipping models from what I see here. Online merchants in the Philippines like to have their goods picked up. In Indonesia, we noticed that a lot of Indonesian shoppers prefer to pay not by credit cards, but by cash. And they don't want to part with their cash until they see the goods. So what we did was we deployed messengers and couriers riding bicycles to deliver goods and accept payment. So in every market, it's going to be quite different. So it's really local market knowledge and the flexibility of our delivery partners to make this thing happen. The power of the fan. Well, you know, we all know how influential and important social media is in driving traffic to your site and in getting subscriptions and in delivering marketing, relevant marketing messages to your potential audience and also to drive repeat business. So in the US, for example, for every like you get on your fan page, it really drives at least 20 hits to your e-marketplace. So knowledge of how to optimize your site, whether it's by SEO or by paid media, is going to be very important. Driving social, you know, your social circle into converting them into a buyer, because there's no greater influence in driving and influencing buyer behavior than family and friends. Last but not least, you know, this whole landscape is changing because technology has made distance and geography irrelevant. The internet has leveled the playing field for small entrepreneurs to be able to compete with the traditional brick and mortar retail marketplaces. So, you know, it's not about having marketing money. It's not about size so much, but really about the products and the knowledge of who you want to sell to, and really the availability of relatively affordable technology in creating your first online business and being able to sell not just within your country but across to the different markets. And a recent survey indicated that a lot of international online shoppers are very willing to shop from foreign online entrepreneurs. So it's a very exciting time if you're going to be a digital entrepreneur today. So let's look at the U.S. and what has really worked. It's fascinating. I just thought I'd talk about 1 minute about. Do you know who this guy is? It's John Donahoe, the CEO of eBay, which has really made a bit of a comeback. And again, it's another I guess proof point that there's really no one model, not even in an advanced market like the U.S. So how did eBay transform itself from auctions? Well, I think it's due to its ability to experiment and turn around by changing its business model when it had to. So actually, less than 10% of its revenues comes from auctions, which was really the first way that it became big. And in this case, we don't have a founder CEO running eBay, but actually a professional CEO who is not even from the tech world. But by changing its business model through emphasis on marketplaces instead of auctions, by the acquisition and dominance of PayPal, which is one of the leading payment platforms in the world, it really owns a very big component of the value chain. And by offering web services to merchants online, a company called GSI Commerce, it has been, its stock price has jumped up after being in the doldrums for over 10 years. Compare that with still who I think is the holy grail of e-commerce, the company and business model that we all want to be, is really the way Amazon has done it. Despite that, it has had its ups and downs. It withstood its dot-com bubble and its complacency in its early years by also having to reinvent itself from just selling online books to selling just about everything else and trying to drive all the traditional retailers out of business. Very, very different from eBay, which likes to partner with its retail partners. Now, how did Mr. Bezos do it? He did it through a relentless focus on customer support, which is the first topic of our panel discussion after the keynote address. Second, he came up with this device called the Kindle. Again, an example of how you can leverage on technology to really drive business your way. And thirdly, even though it took him many, many years to become profitable, he did it through scale, scale, scale. And some of the business models in e-commerce thrive on scale. You just got to outsize everyone else. So he's the founder, and he's still running it like a startup business, which is another lesson for some of us entrepreneurs who are trying to put up our online business. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. DCOM has assembled for you in the next 2 days a list, and a very impressive list of experts who are going to help us struggle and tackle these subjects. And hopefully, it is my hope that you will come away after 2 days with this learning. And I'd just like to paraphrase the words of Jeffrey Bezos himself, that we are still in the light bulb stage of e-commerce. And we live in exciting times, and I'm really, really happy that you're here. And I hope that you will learn more than a few things in the next couple of days. And take some time out to meet some of the people in our young industry. We're very, very friendly, so please feel free to introduce yourselves. And I want to thank you again. And I hope you enjoy the next 2 days at DCOM. Thank you for coming.